is the sense of what you're hearing in terms? I mean, I think you and other reporters had said there will be things we've never heard before. Certainly, Pecker's immunity deal with the Southern District of New York means that we haven't heard Pecker in his own words before. Doesn't mean that the Justice Department didn't know what he knew, but we hadn't heard it. I mean, what he has testified to is a criminal election interference scheme that by every measure violates any reasonable read of election laws. What is the reaction to what's now coming in pretty quickly?
I mean, I certainly think the reporting, the core reporters are like riveted by what Pecker is saying. I think the jury, you know, this is a marathon for them. I think they certainly came in, jury selection happened quite quickly. And I think they are just in the process of absorbing. I think the last 2 days, they were certainly interested and captivated, but probably overwhelmed in their own sense.
Is there a sense that the prosecution had this strategy of bringing on someone who still likes Trump and who Trump still likes? It feels like the moments where it's going to be very combative potentially may or may not be with Mr. Pecker.
I think that's a right on read of this. I think Pecker certainly comes up. He introduces this whole scheme, and that is giving us an introduction to what the jurors are about to hear for the next 6 weeks. But it is also someone that I think has a favorable view of Trump and has a longtime friend of Trump. And it's certainly going to be interesting to see how Trump's attorneys choose to cross him when they do, whether that be tomorrow or Friday, sometime later this week. It's certainly, he's also, you know, coming off in a way that's quite grandfatherly, I think, to the press corps as well as the jury. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what they choose to approach him on cross-examination.
Michael Steele, I just kept thinking that this is a man who I'm not there to absorb the grandfatherly touches, but certainly the way he speaks is the way a lot of Trump allies speak. He was he was the most eligible bachelor. Suzanne Craig pointed out that he was never that. He was married, 3 times, but still almost always married. It's going to be awkward to try to discredit him without also discrediting all of the lovely things he said about Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's one of those dynamics when you're looking at this situation with the combination of the trial and all that's coming out of that, and then the drama that's outside of the courtroom with political players who are now having to reconcile a lot of things that they've said about Trump, a lot of things that they've pushed out there about Trump. All of that's going to come crashing into this moment. And Pecker, for example, is setting up this conversation in a way in which you're going to see and get exposed to what a lot of us know is the real Donald Trump, how he operates, all of the things that he said and how he's manipulated situations and people. And so there are going to be a whole lot of people out there who are going to realize just how much of a sucker they've been, and how much of a sucker they continue to be. As they try to justify politically, for example, Nicole, going into the rest of this cycle, support for a man who's sitting in a courtroom, who's now being exposed for the charlatan fraud that he is. And certainly for a lot of the Christian Republican type voters out there who, see this man as Moses. Well, guess what? Moses' staff is broken. And he can't lead you where you think you need to go. So there's a lot, I think, in this trial that's sort of an understatement of what's going to be playing out for a lot of people in a lot of rooms and a lot of places in Washington and around the country.
Michael Steele, there's something that for me as a non-lawyer feels silly for me to say, but I have the feeling just in consuming the information that the story we're familiar with, the narrator we've come to know for a variety of legal and political reasons is Michael Cohen. But what appears to have happened is the reverse engineering, at least of the narration of the story. So he goes down 22 times to meet with Bragg's team. And he talks to the press. He's actually just announced that out of respect for the process, he will no longer be speaking. So we won't be hearing much more from him, but we knew there was a frequency, a really robust pace of his interactions with prosecutors. And it appears, again, we've only taken in Pecker's testimony, but it appears that some reverse engineering has gone on in the narration of the story. And I wonder if you get to the point, Michael Steele, where you don't really need Cohen, or if he goes on the stand, he would have to contradict David Pecker, who said Trump was the most eligible bachelor, who was so great that he put his ratings from The Apprentice inside the National Enquirer every week, who was so stylish, he made a style magazine, who was such, I mean, he's basically said everything that Donald Trump wanted every Republican to say about him. He's already said it on the stand. You're going to have McDougal, who I believe in interviews has said she was in love with Trump. I mean, by the time Cohen gets on the stand, if they're going to impugn his credibility, they're going to be a litany of people who've already testified to the same fact patterns.
Yeah, I mean, that raises an interesting point. I mean, I think that, Michael Cohen, I mean, Pecker kind of is the scene setter and sort of gives sort of the machinations. And yeah, all of the drama, all of the flowery things he's saying about Trump, how they set him up and what they pushed out. That's one thing. I think what Cohen comes in and does is deconstructs a lot of that. And just really kind of, this was a bare bone transaction. And this was trying to figure out a workaround. How do we avoid having this publicly exposed? What do we need to do? And I think a lot of that's very practical aspects of what happened here really strips bare a lot of the other stuff that, whether, the porn model or the Playboy model was in love with him or not, or what Pecker said to sort of prop him up and push him out there. All of that just seems folly in my view. And I think Cohen has a chance to make this thing real in a way against that fact pattern, against the facts and what happened that Pecker's laying out, how this scheme came together, that gives it a certain kind of energy that the prosecutors know, yeah, this is how we lock it down. Yeah. This is how we focus everybody's attention on what really happened here.
So I do like to pull back the curtain and share with our audience what covering Trump has done to us. You just said porn model and then corrected yourself because, of course, it's a porn star and a Playboy model. There is an element of feeling, I mean, for my part, I come on the air trying really hard not to make Trump Pecker jokes, but sometimes the words run together in a sentence. Trump is making us so much dumber, Michael Steele. And I wonder if voters will start to feel some of that, too.
Well, I think some have felt it for a while, which is, look, no one wants to realize they've been played a sucker. No one likes that feeling. And particularly when you had countless numbers of family, friends, neighbors, coworkers, and others telling you, you're getting played, right? So there is this sort of reckoning that folks have to come to. Donald Trump's MO is counting on that reckoning not occurring, counting on feeding that beast as much as he can with more nonsense, more noise, more things that get you anxious, make you angry. So you forget to think about the fact that, well, what am I so angry about? Yeah, I mean, inflation is no longer 10%, it's 3%. Why am I pissed, right? So there's that P.T. Barnum aspect of this, sort of big tent, come inside, let me tell you a story, and you get suckered in. But then when you walk out, you have to walk back into the real world. And for a lot of people, walking back into that real world can be a little bit jarring because you realize you just got played on so many levels in so many ways, and that this man doesn't really care about you. He's not really pro-life. He's not really a good Christian. He's not a smart or capable businessman. He is what everyone has said he is. He is the fraud, the fake, the charlatan, the fake, the guy who labeled the media fake news first engaged in creating fake news. Yeah. So this is where it all comes home and roost. That's part of what people say. This is not the most important trial. It may not be from a fact pattern or legal standpoint, but it is from a cultural, political standpoint important. because it exposes the man for what he is.
Exactly. And I think Andrew Weissman, these are the facts that Trump is most desperate to keep from his voters. I'm not positive why. I'm really not. I think it may be because he's inoculated himself from the facts of January 6th by lifting up the insurrectionists. And I think he thinks he's got a cover story in the Presidential Records Act for hoarding and taking classified documents. These are not facts he wants out there.
Absolutely. I wanted to build on some stuff that you were just talking about. So I sort of view David Pecker as not a table setter. I view him as something that may resonate with the two lawyers on the jury. These are the principals. David Pecker and Donald Trump, they are the principals. When Michael Cohen testifies, he's sort of like, I mean, I'm a lawyer. He's carrying out what the clients want.
He's a staffer.
He's a staffer, right? In sort of executive branch terms, he is not a principal. He is the person carrying out what the principals want. There was an agreement with Pecker and Trump. The lawyer is just figuring out how to do it. Like Alan Weisberg, how do you get accomplished what the principal wants? We've had those positions where you're a staffer to the principal. So this is more than table setting. This is, really the heart and soul and the beginning of the agreement. He takes you right there. And then by the end, he's going to have in 2017 the end of that story. I also think that they sort of borrowed a play from the January 6th committee in that this trial is going to have lots of people from inside the tent. And this is a person who is, as you saying all these good things about him, because he is them. He is inside. He is going to be so hard to cross for that reason, not just because he said good things, but I mean, this is somebody who was there with him. So there's no really good way to cross him other than to say what you didn't know, like you didn't see certain things, you didn't know certain things. But a hard cross on him could completely backfire.